Hello and welcome to Ag PhD. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. Well, I'm smiling today, but I'll tell you what, I wasn't smiling last summer when I saw green snap issues in corn all around the United States. We're going to talk today about how to reduce green snap issues or even concerns about lodging on your farm this coming year.
We're also going to focus today on a chemistry that's been widely used my whole lifetime. It's Atrazine. We're going to talk about what you need to know about this product.
We've got a Weed of the Week coming up later in the show and an Iron Talk as well. But first, here's this week's Farm Basics.
How much yield and profit did you lose the moment you put your seed in the ground? A poor stand at planting keeps your crops from reaching their yield potential, and closing the seed trench behind the planter is essential to establishing a good crop stand. The Germinator Closing Wheel from Farm Shop MFG is here to give your crop the strong start it needs for maximum yield. Act now to receive an early order rebate plus free shipping. Get ready for spring planting with the Germinator Closing Wheel. For more information, visit farmshopmfg.com.
During our Farm Basics time today, we're going to answer a commonly asked question: what is compaction and why is it bad? Let me start with this. When I think about compaction, I just simply think about soil that's too hard for the root to penetrate through. And instead of penetrating through it, it grows right alongside it.
Well, I think, Brian, one of the challenges here is that many people have planted a garden or at least put a few seeds in the dirt in school just to see a plant pop up out of the ground. And whenever we put that seed in, a lot of times we're patting the ground to make it a little bit firm. And you want it a little bit firm. That's how you get good seed to soil contact. The challenge gets to be when it gets hard and it's way too firm. That's called compaction. And we get compaction by driving through a field with too much weight, and the pounds per square inch push that soil together. And when you get that hard layer, you're right, it does limit root growth.
That's what compaction is. Let's talk a little about how farmers can reduce compaction issues out in the field. Well, number one, stay out of the field when it's too wet. Yes, that makes a lot of sense, but what do you do when you have to plant, when you have to harvest, when you have to go spray? A lot of times, you know, we just flat out don't live in a perfect world, and as farmers, we do some things to our ground that we don't want to do, but we're kind of stuck with it. So let's talk about how a farmer can alleviate these issues other than staying out of the field.
Hey, first, Brian, I want to just talk about, there are a couple things farmers are doing when they say, hey, I have to be in the field. The way I can create the least amount of compaction is spreading out the load of that tractor or that equipment over more square inches. They can do that by using tracks on the tractor or on the implement rather than using tires. If they are using tires, they can deflate the tires to some degree to let them squish out just a little bit more, lower your pounds per square inch by spreading it out over more square inches. So those are a couple common strategies.
And also there can be more tires. Instead of just having 2 tires going through the field, if there are 4 or 8 or something like that, now you spread out that load across more tires.
All right, now after the damage is done though, how do you clean it up? The most common way to do it is by doing some tillage. If farmers see that, oh, you know what, at 4 inches deep, I've got a really rock hard layer, I'll do tillage at 5 or 6 inches deep and break that up. That would be probably the most common way to deal with compaction.
There are some people who will go out there with cover crops, like let's say turnips or radishes, or for that matter, even a long-term perennial plant that has a strong root system like alfalfa. That may be able to bust up some of the compaction.
The other thing is, over time, farmers can make some changes to their soil. For example, as we reduce tillage, we see organic matter levels rise, which increases the tilth and just the looseness of that soil. You get a little more oxygen in there and fluff that soil up. The other thing that kind of helps with the tilth of the soil is increasing the calcium percentage. So sometimes farmers will apply calcium products like gypsum, for example, onto the ground to try to loosen that soil up.
I always talk about drain tile. If I've got more drain tile out there, then I have more air in the soil and I don't have near the compaction. If the water is stuck in the soil instead of air, well, you're more likely to create a compaction problem. So get the water table down by using tile. Less compaction will be the result.
Well, we talk about compaction here. It's just important to understand that's hard soil caused because it got pressed together, very likely by equipment. But ultimately, the best thing to do is just stay out of the field when it's too wet.
Well, unfortunately, farmers may have to go into the field if they want to control our weed of the week. Can you identify this week's weed?
Why do I farm? It's just something I've always wanted to do. Something I've known since I was my daughter's age. When you farm, you have a responsibility to keep it growing. To look at a freshly planted field, a newborn calf, even your bottom line, then ask yourself, how do I help this grow? How can I make it even more productive? I ask myself these questions every day because no matter what I'm doing, I'm still a farmer.
Avoid the V-shaped pattern of injury caused by chemical buildup in your booms. The Express End Cap from Hypro eliminates the dead ends that lead to herbicide buildup and provides easy access to your booms, giving a complete flush between applications. Hypro, helping you spray better.
Introducing the all-new Diamant Cornhead from Capello, USA. With a revolutionary design highly innovative for its class, we have painstakingly designed every component down to the smallest detail to maximize your harvest efficiency. This gives you unprecedented standards in operation and performance. To get a hands-on look at this beast featuring our new gray poly design, join us at the National Farm Machinery Show in Louisville, Kentucky, February 12th through the 15th. Capello, wherever you are, we are.
Every day, we rise. We face the pressure, the uncertainty. Sometimes the decisions we make seem as tough as the work we do. Let the Acceleron portfolio lighten your load with a powerful array of seed treatments, fungicides, insecticides, nematicides, and bioenhancers offered in select combinations to give you coverage with one simple decision. Looking for a little peace of mind? We're on it.
Find love, and then give it all away. Find love, then give it all away.
One problem that was common in 2019, we continue to get questions about, it's green snap.
Well, unfortunately, a lot of people are looking at this as solely a hybrid issue. Hey, if I had the right hybrid, I didn't have any green snap, and boy, if I had the wrong hybrid, it was a disaster. I'm here to tell you right now, it wasn't just the hybrid. In a lot of cases, you saw hybrid differences in part because of the growth stage that hybrid was at when the wind hit. I want you to step back though for just a second and think about all the reasons why green snap may have been worse this year. We had delayed planting. Okay, why did we have delayed planting? Because the water table was high. When the water table is high, do our roots go deeper or do they stay more shallow? Well, they stay more shallow. Okay, plus the fact that when the ground is all saturated, you're not getting the nutrients in that you should because many of your roots have died because they got in a water table, and that's not good. There's no oxygen there. You're not going to have good overall plant health. The next thing is, when the later planting occurred, all right, now all this growth happened in a very short window, so plants grew from knee-high to shoulder-high in our area in about a 2-week time span. Well, when that happens, that plant is growing so rapidly, the plant just can't keep up with nutrients. And I would be willing to bet you, if you were doing plant tissue analysis every day over the course of that time period during the fast growth, you would find that your plant was short on the key nutrients that we talk about all the time for green snap, that is potassium, copper, and manganese.
The other thing, Brian, is that there were a couple of big windstorms that hit a broad amount of acres that happened somewhere between 2 a.m. and 8 a.m. When you think about plant growth, what happens during the day, that plant is catching all the sunlight it can, and then it's trying to do some growth. And when you've got all those cells that are just plumb full of water and they haven't hardened off yet, 2 to 8 a.m. is really a weak time for that plant. So if you said out of the 24 hours, when do you not want the wind? I don't want it in the very early morning hours like that because those cells have just not hardened off yet.
Here's the other issue. We talk a lot about compaction, and we saw more compaction in 2018 because it was a wet year, and in 2019 because it was a wet year. So again, if you had a compacted soil, you maybe didn't get that plant down deep enough at planting time, your roots didn't grow to the depth that they could have. I bring this all back to overall nutrients. So yes, I would encourage you, get more tile in the ground, try to build your organic matter levels, get more calcium out there, do anything you can to help improve overall drainage. That's a real big key, but it still ultimately comes back to the nutrients. And so I mentioned it once already, but we're going to talk about this in detail: potassium, manganese, and copper.
When your soil pH is above, I would say 6.3, but certainly 6.5, manganese availability gets tough. So you've got to apply a manganese chelate and get it close to where that seed's at, or use an effective foliar product on that crop in order to get enough manganese in. Otherwise, you may run into some trouble. We've done some soil applied applications and that works fine, provided your soil pH is low. With copper, that's another one that is really important with seed coat stretch. It's important with test weight, but it's also important with the rigidity of that stalk. If you've got enough copper out there, you've got a lot better chance of having a good stalk.
Well, plus the fact that copper is a disease element. In fact, a lot of people will talk about that as, if I have good levels of copper, I have less disease in my crop. When you have less disease, you get a healthier plant, you have much less chance for lodging and green snap. Okay, so I do want to talk about potassium, but before I do, I'll just say this. Over the last few years, a lot of people have increased their planting populations, and we absolutely saw more green snap when there were higher planting populations. So when you stop and think about that for just a second, you might say, well, I just can't plant at a higher population. No, not necessarily. What you have to do is you have to get more nutrients in each and every plant. What's happening is you didn't increase your soil test levels for potassium, yet you planted 20% more plants out there than you did years ago. Okay, well, if you don't make a change into the amount of fertility, what do you think is going to happen? It's the same thing if you got 8 kids at home and you have the exact same amount of food as when you had 4 kids. The kids are not going to grow like they should. Plants don't grow like they should when you don't have ample potassium each and every day during that growth cycle. And again, when we talk about that fast growth stage, that's when plants are most susceptible to being short of potassium. So what we want you to do is make sure that your base saturation potassium levels on a soil test are at a bare minimum 4%. That's the absolute rock bottom, and that's for low-end yields. If we're talking high-end yields, we really would like to see in that 6 to 8% range on base saturation K.
Now when it comes to that planting population, if you aren't getting at least 7 bushels of corn yield per 1,000 plants that you're putting out there, you've got way too much population. If you're getting 10 bushels per 1,000 plants, now you're talking. For example, let's say you planted 30,000 corn seeds per acre. I'm saying you need to have at least 210 bushel corn up to 300 bushel corn. If I'm getting 300 bushel corn at 30,000, then I'm going to start thinking about increasing my planting population. If I'm not getting 300 bushel corn or close to it, I probably have enough plants out there, and it's not that I need 35 or something like that in order to get more yield.
Once again, if you had a green snap or lodging issue on your farm this year, we don't want you thinking, hey, there are certain varieties I absolutely have to dump because this year, oh, they had the worst green snap issue. It was probably just they were at the wrong growth stage, and more than likely, if you go to those spots where you had green snap, if you soil test there, I'm going to bet you are not going to find sufficient levels of potassium and manganese and copper. You need all 3 if you want to really reduce your green snap issues. Do that, and now we've mostly solved that problem. And again, if you've had compaction, if your soil was waterlogged, well, even if you had a lot of fertility there, it couldn't get into the plant. So fix the drainage, fix the fertility, and green snap hopefully is going to be a thing of the past on your farm.
The other thing that could cause problems out in those fields is our weed of the week. We'll show you how to stop this tough weed later in the show.
More choices, more money. With Bayer Plus Rewards, you choose from our broad portfolio of high-performance products. Earn more money on the eligible products that are right for your farm. And use our new portal to see your purchases, track your rewards, and decide how you want to use them. Visit mybayerplus.com to sign in and start earning. That's the advantage of more control in your hands. That's the plus.
There are a lot of steps to having a perfect season. Don't let your fertilizer plan be the step that trips you up. No matter when you apply fertilizer, no matter how, AgroLiquid has the experts and the products that'll help you move closer to your target and hit the bullseye. AgroLiquid moves you closer to your target.
Do you feel like there's never enough time to get everything done before planting? The window for spring work is quick and unforgiving. Give yourself the upper hand with the ProTill High Performance High Speed Disc. More and more farmers agree the ProTill is the right tool for springfield conditions and heavy residue management. Zero maintenance bearings, independent disc technology, oversized pins and bushings allow the ProTill to handle whatever field or conditions you can throw at it. Degelman High Performance Equipment.
How much does your crop residue cost you? Over time, residue accumulates in your fields, building excess carbon levels and tying up your plant available nitrogen. Residue also traps P, K, and micros and can take years to naturally become available to your crops. This is because soil lacks the diverse microbial life needed to break it all down. With Decomp, you can naturally restore life to your soil and allow the release of valuable crop fertility. Learn more about Decomp at eggbio.solutions. It's no secret that Mother Nature doesn't always cooperate with your schedule. Field conditions in recent years kept many from timely planting and fertilizing, and when you can't get your fertilizer applied, you lose thousands of dollars in yield potential. If you need flexibility in your fertility application timing, you need a drop tube system from C&R Supply. C&R drop tubes allow you to apply liquid nitrogen in season and place it exactly where your crop needs it. To learn more about low-cost C&R drop tube solutions, visit crsupply.com.
Today we're going to talk a little about atrazine because atrazine gets used so much, and we think that there are many ways that it should be used and some ways it should not be used. So we want to talk today about the advantages and disadvantages of atrazine.
Well, Brian, probably the most common topic when it comes to atrazine is it's leachable and it could get down into groundwater if it gets used in the wrong situation or at the wrong rate or at the wrong time. One way that I like to look at safety of products is by comparing the LD50. This is a measurement the government uses to determine safety. And I think about atrazine, it's at 3,000 milligrams per kilogram. How about another common thing that I actually ingest every day, a little bit of caffeine? Well, caffeine's safety is only 200 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. So using those numbers, it would take me, according to the government, 15 times more of a dose of atrazine to have a 50% chance of my death. Well, I don't want to test that theory out in reality. I don't want to actually try to consume a bunch of atrazine. And I'm not saying that, oh, it's so safe, you should just go ahead and drink it or something like that. What I am saying is there's a lot more harmful things out there than atrazine, but still, we have to use common sense and try and protect ourselves from regulation and public fear by controlling where our atrazine is at.
So here's the thing. It doesn't matter that atrazine is much, much, much safer than caffeine. People just don't like foreign things in their water. And we know that atrazine's leachable. So what we talk about all the time is, all right, well, let's use atrazine in a smart way. How does it ever get into the water? Well, almost all the atrazine that's ended up in groundwater has been traced back to pre-emerge use. So if you want to avoid this problem, it's very simple. And our recommendation always at Ag PhD is do not use atrazine pre-emerge. And I realize you might have done it for a generation or two or three on your farm. I don't care. I'm just saying if we want to be smart as farmers and think about all the non-farmers out there, which is 99% of the United States population, non-farmers, we shouldn't be using atrazine pre-emerge. Here's what we would advise you to do. Take atrazine, use it post-emerge, and use it at ½ a pound per acre or less. Now the reason why we say post-emerge instead of pre-emerge, so just so we're clear on this, when you think about post-emerge, spraying at that time, you've got weeds, you've got plants, you've got all this green material that's going to absorb the atrazine. Then even if it does get down into the ground, there are all kinds of roots at that point to absorb it. plus the fact that spraying post-emerge, it's at a hotter time of year, it's at a time of year where there's more sunlight, and you just have a lot less chance for rain to push that down way deep into the ground. Then coming back to the rate, 1/2 pound per acre, obviously there's a lot less chance for that atrazine to end up in the groundwater when it's used at 1/2 pound as opposed to 1 or 2 pounds per acre.
Okay, now let's talk about using atrazine for weed control. Brian just mentioned we want to use just 1/2 pound, so when you're cutting the rate back that far, you have to think about atrazine as a helper. It does definitely help on a wide variety of species, mostly broadleaf weeds, but a little bit on some of the escape grass. So it can be used certainly as a helper. With atrazine, I want to watch where I'm putting this. I like it better on high pH soils because it's much more available once it's in the soil. However, that again is where you could have some more carryover, so do be careful that you don't overlap with your applications.
All right, Darren mentioned grass and broadleaves. Just keep this in mind. Atrazine, as a general statement, is about 3 times more effective, more impactful on broadleaves than it is grass. It doesn't have that much grass activity, but it does help. And like Darren said, we want to throw this in with, let's say, one of the HPPDs, or maybe it's status in corn. Also, I would say this, if you're going to use any atrazine, you need to next year be rotating to one of 3 crops, either corn, sorghum, or soybeans. That's it. If you're rotating to anything else, then we would suggest no atrazine use this year.
Well, atrazine sure can be a nice helper on weed control. We'll talk about how it works on our Weed of the Week coming up next. How many jobs can you do this winter that can make you $10,000 an hour? Ag PhD is hosting a free soils clinic Thursday, January 30th to show you how to cut fertilizer expenses and increase yield. Join us for what could be the most profitable day of your farming career. Register at agphd.com.
The Weed of the Week is brought to you by Corteva Agriscience, Agriculture Division of Dow DuPont. Finish the fight against tough weeds with the Enlist Weed Control System.
Weeds are tough, but we're tougher. With unrivaled weed control, reduced drift, and near zero volatility. So, who's tough now?
Our Weed of the Week is just an annual. It's giant ragweed, so Darren, it should be easy to control.
Well, unfortunately, Roundup is failing on this weed in many areas of the country, so you've just got to get after it with your pre-emerge program. In soybeans, we like our 3 pre strategy with one of the yellows, Authority or Valor, and Metribuzin, and that's been effective. Then post-emerge, I like the new Enlist soybeans where I can use 2,4-D. I like the new Extend soybeans where I can use dicamba products. I think that's the best option.
Hey, you forgot something, Darren. First rate. First rate can still work if your giant ragweed is not ALS resistant. So you could use first rate either pre-emerge or post in soybeans.
All right, in corn, we talked about atrazine earlier in the show. I like that in my post-emerge products. I like it with some of the HPPD products. That'd be a cheap way to go post. You've got to start out with something tough though, pre-emerge on it. I like Verdict, but there are a lot of good choices.
Yep, and post-emerge, status, or an HPPD would be fine, and again, spike it with atrazine.
In wheat, we don't normally have a lot of giant ragweed problems, but we would start with Sharpen and come back with a high rate of Husky.
In non-crop areas, we just tell you dicamba and 2,4-D can work pretty well on this. Try to get it when it's small. When it gets big, yes, it's a lot more difficult to control. At that point, you may not even kill it with anything. So stop it early, use good strong rates, and giant ragweed won't be a big challenge on your farm.
That's all the time we have for this week's Weed, but Iron Talk is coming up next.
Tough, precise, efficient. Strip tillage with the Soil Warrior brings the future to your farm. Learn more at soilwarrior.com/AgPhD.
More choices, more money. With Bayer Plus Rewards, you choose from our broad portfolio of high-performance products. Earn more money on the eligible products that are right for your farm. And use our new portal to see your purchases, track your rewards, and decide how you want to use them. Visit mybayerplus.com to sign in and start earning. That's the advantage of more control in your hands. That's the plus.
Challenging field conditions often make harvest difficult. Can your corn head handle it? The GTS X10 corn head from Agra US is a rugged, cost-effective alternative to heavier, more traditional heads. Constructed of durable yet lightweight aluminum, the X10 puts less strain on your combine without losing harvest effectiveness. And it is 40% lighter than traditional heads, reducing field compaction in those less than ideal conditions. For more information, give us a call at 8334-AGRA US.
There are a lot of steps to having a perfect season. Don't let your fertilizer plan be the step that trips you up. No matter when you apply fertilizer, no matter how, AgroLiquid has the experts and the products that'll help you move closer to your target and hit the bullseye. AgroLiquid moves you closer to your target.
Do you have excess moisture hurting your yields? Join us at a free Ag PhD tiling clinic Tuesday, January 28th. We'll show you what you need to know to improve your drainage and your bottom line for decades to come. Learn more and register at agphd.com.
It starts with genetics, what you're made of. It takes agronomy. It's local. It's knowing your land and having the tools to put the right product in the right place. It's built on service with trust, grit, and determination. Because it turns out, what it takes to make the best product is a lot like what it takes to make a farmer. Golden Harvest, rooted in genetics, agronomy, and service.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
At Harvest, you have one goal: finding the perfect flow of grain from the field to the bin. Case IH axial flow combines are engineered for matched capacity to deliver proven grain savings, so you can keep efficiency flowing smoothly. Find yours with the Case IH axial flow.
How accurate are your spray applications? Remember, every drop of spray solution has to run through your spray tips to get to the field. The performance of those tips is the focus of today's Iron Talk. Going into this season, I challenge you, check your spray tips for performance. Here's 5 steps you can take to make your evaluation. First, check your nozzle alignment. If your spray pattern isn't perfect, your application will not be evenly spread and performance will suffer. Next, run some clean water through the sprayer and check the spray nozzles for damage. Then monitor your spray pressure. See if you're delivering exactly what you should be putting out through the nozzles. Then look at your spray pattern quality and be critical. If it's not perfect, you really need new nozzles. Honestly, you should expect that this is going to falter with time. This chart shows an accelerated wear test, so depending on what spray solutions you're applying, your nozzles may last longer than this, but it gives a great comparison of the life expectancy of different materials. Notice how brass tips, for example, wear out much more quickly. If you're still not convinced, the 5th step to evaluate your tips is to monitor changes in flow rate from tip to tip. You can do this with an automated calibration device or just manually measuring the amount of spray coming out through each tip for a given amount of time. Your spray tip performance is absolutely critical to your success this season. So take some shop time right now to evaluate your current tips performance and replace them as needed before they completely wear out. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now back to the show.
That's all the time we have for today's show, but before we go, we want to encourage you to check out the Ag PhD Winter Workshop schedule. You can just go to agphd.com to learn more.
And don't miss the next Ag PhD TV show. We'll have another Weed of the Week, Farm Basics, Iron Talk, and a whole lot more. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.